Hey, how's it going? Right, this one I'm actually excited for. So this book is Amazing Spider-Man Kravens Last Hunt, written by J.M.D. Mateus, with art by Mike Zeck and Bob McLeod. I really like this. This is my favourite Spider-Man storyline. I love it to bits. It's so good. It's dark. It's very dark, but it's super good. So we begin with Kraven completely naked. And he's got a load of statues that he's basically just smashing up, and his inner monologue is basically like, I am Kraven the Beast. My mind is rage and glory, my heart is fire and pride, my body is grace and power. I am Kravinoff, the man. And he's getting old, and he's remembering about his mother and how they said that she was insane. And he's remembering his father, who lived as a bureaucrat, and how much he despises his father, how much he loved his mother. And then we have this this funeral, and Spider-Man, Peter Parker, swings in, and it's the funeral for a mobster called Joe Face. It was kind of just a petty criminal, and Spider-Man comes in. He's in his black suit, because at this point he was wearing a cloth version of the black suit. Because this was in between the symbiote and the Venom. It's in between issue 250 something, issue 253, and issue 300. This is before issue 300 where Venom is introduced, but it's after he finds out that the black suit was a symbiote. So he's made a cloth version of the black suit, and he's paying his respects to this mobster. Meanwhile, Kraven is basically he's naked in a pool of spiders and he's eating them, and he's becoming more ravenous. And Spider-Man feels that I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die soon, but not today. And then he switches off his light. And then he proceeds to go outside as Spider-Man swinging across the city. Kraven jumps out of a helicopter, and they're about to come to fight. Spidey gets a dart shot at him in his throat, right in his neck, and he sees Joe Face, and it turns into Kraven. Kraven's walking towards him. He's like, "Come to me, Spider. Let honor be restored." And then he whacks Spider-Man around the face, and he traps him in a net. And Spider-Man can't get out of this net. He's like, "This is going to take me at least a day to get out of this net at this current state that I'm in." And Kraven's just walking towards Spider-Man, and he's like, I know what Kraven's going to do. He's just going to drug me up. He's going to put me in another jungle. I'm going to find a way to beat him, and I'm going to beat him. And then Kraven raises a rifle and shoots Spider-Man in the head, killing him. And Spider-Man is buried, and Kraven just starts laughing. And the tombstone where Kraven's buried Spider-Man just says, "Here lies Spider-Man, slain by the Hunter." And Kraven's watching over the grave in Spider-Man's outfit, in the black suit, and he's laughing. And we see this woman, she's running across the street, and it's raining, and she gets tripped over by a rat, and a hand reaches out the sewer and drags her in, and she comes face to face with Vermin, who is a villain from a while back. He's basically a D-list supervillain. He was a homeless guy who was tested on by Baron Zemo, and then had a fight with Captain America and Spider-Man, and they were almost beaten when fighting him together. When see Mary Jane, who's like worried almost to death, and she's going into almost paranoia, thinking about what could have happened to Peter. She's like, he's gonna be fine. No, he's dead. He's gonna be fine. No, he's dead. Then we see Kraven, who's becoming more and more like the Spider, and we see him like, we don't actually know if this is real or this is in his dreams, but he's seeing like this spider thing. And then we see Vermin, who's like, he's eaten this woman. He's now like looking at the newspapers. He's like, Spider-Man, and he's like, that guy hit me, that guy hurt me. I'm not going anywhere near him. So he goes into the outside world, and he's like, I'm gonna fight Spider-Man. I'm gonna show him that, you know, I can beat him. And then Mary Jane's getting harassed by these two guys, and no one, and who else shows up but Kraven dressed as Spider-Man. And he starts pounding these guys, and he would have killed them if Spider-Man didn't shout stop, or if Mary Jane didn't shout stop. And that's how Mary Jane finds out that this isn't Peter. So Kraven's going around in the Spider-Man costume, and he's like taking down thugs. He's killing them. And then he takes his mask off, and he shouts into the sky, I am Kraven. And then we see more of Vermin. He's running around the city, eating people. He devours this police officer by like making his rats cover him. And then this other woman, he kind of like forces her to the car and then licks her face. And it's really disturbing to read, and it's really like, yeah, that's making me that's making our villain frightening. More of that, please. I want our guy who's literally a cannibal to act like a cannibal. Do it. That's good. I like that scene. Then we see Mary Jane. She visits Robbie Robertson, and she's like, why did I come here? Even if he does know that Peter Parker's Spider-Man, I can't tell him. If he doesn't know, it can't be me that he gets the news from. Kraven's looking at this rat that he has in a cage, and he's stabbing it with a sword, and he just says, tonight. And Vermin's back in the sewer, he's sleeping, and then he gets up, and a hand comes around his throat, and he scurries back away, and it's Kraven dressed in the full black Spider-Man suit, and they fight, and it's brutal, because Vermin's ripping the costume, and Kraven's pounding on Vermin, and it's an all-out like barrage of like punches and clawing and kicking. And then we see Spider-Man, and then we see Peter Parker, and he's curled up in a ball, and the rest of the page is completely white, and he sees Ned Leeds, and that's kind of confirmation that he's dead. And we see throughout the rest of this that he wants to stay dead. He doesn't want to become Spider-Man again. He doesn't want to, you know, go back into the land of the living. But the spider half of him is forcing him back out until the point where he does literally crawl out of his own grave. He goes like through the mansion that's in front of his gravestone, and a tiger starts attacking him. He throws it into an alligator. Then these two bodyguards come in, and they're like, "Look at him. He's weak. He's barely standing." He turns around. They're like, "Uh-oh." He just grabs them. He's like, "Where?" And then Spider-Man jumps out of the window, and Craven in it, like, the bottom of every page is just like, he's coming. Meanwhile, he's got Vermin trapped in like this a cage that's electrocuting him. And the first person that Spider-Man goes to see is Mary Jane. And he's like, "Look, I'm alright, I'm fine, but I need to go back out and I need to fight Kraven and I need to get revenge on him because he wore my mask, he murdered in my name, and he made me believe that I was dead for 2 weeks. I'm going to beat the shit out of him." So Spider-Man goes, and he arrives, and Kraven just looks and is like, "He's here." So Craven's inner monologue continues again, and he's like, they said my mother was insane, my father was a bureaucrat, and I hated my father, and I loved my mother, but they had my mother killed, and my whole life was stolen from me by the spider. And Kraven believes that this spider is like a physical thing. He believes that it's a part of everyone, and he believes that it's what's destroying society. But Kraven has started to fall in love with the idea of the spider, as he feels like his 2 weeks of vigilantism has kind of like made him embrace the spider part of him. Spider-Man comes in, starts pounding on Kraven, starts punching him repeatedly, and he's like, and Kraven's like, "You can punch me once, you can punch me twice, you can punch me 100 times, it won't change anything. I still won." And Spider-Man stops, and Kraven's like, "I won our fight. Follow me." And he shows Spider-Man to what he's done with Vermin. Spider-Man's like not having any of it. He's like, "Let him go." And Spider-Man's going insane, and Kraven just jumps on the back of this elephant and starts screaming into the air. And Spider-Man just picks up the elephant, and he's like, "Shut up." And Kraven like starts like becoming infatuated with the spider again, and he presses a button which releases Vermin, and Vermin starts like attacking Peter, and so they have a little fight which doesn't last long until Kraven like throws a knife into Vermin's hand. He's like, "You're free, you've proved your point, you can go." And so he starts scurrying off to kill more people. And Spider-Man just gets up, and they start like walking up the stairs. And Spider-Man's like, "You really think I'm going to go after everything that you put me through for the last 2 weeks?" And Kraven's like, "You have my word. Kraven the Hunter will never hunt again." And Spider-Man's like, "I'll be back." Swings out to fight Vermin. Meanwhile, Kraven is like picks up a picture of his parents, and he's like, I finally found out. What if the spider didn't steal my life? What if it set me free? I feel like I've become a good man. in my final few days. But now I can die a good man. And he picks up a shotgun. He picks up the same rifle that he used to shoot Spider-Man. And he turns it and he puts it in his own mouth. And he pulls the trigger. And he's dead. Unfortunately, because it's a comic book, Kraven, doesn't die. He doesn't stay dead. But I feel like that's the perfect end for a character. I feel like, well, there's still more of the story left. Spider-Man fights Vermin and he's inside the sewer and he feels like he's back in the coffin, and the inner monologue again is tremendous, where he's like, I'm not afraid, I am. I'm terrified, I feel like I'm going to die. And they fight, and Spider-Man ends up bringing Vermin back into, up into the sunlight, and Vermin, collapses out of sheer shock. And Spider-Man's like, I'm going to take you to a person called Reed Richards, and he's going to get you some help. And Spider-Man's like, I can't believe I'm back in the light. He goes back to see Mary Jane, and she's like, you're home. And then we get the scene where they're burying Kraven. I feel like this is not only the best Spider-Man story, but by far this is the best Kraven story. It just is. It's so damn good. You can say it's really edgy and dark and it's gritty and it's so, melodramatic. I feel like that works. And in the era that it was, everything was so edgy. Everything was so dark. Everything was trying to be, we had the same thing with Daredevil Born Again. Everything was just trying to be, we need to analyze our characters more. We need to put them in scenarios that they can't, or the audience or the readers can't see them getting out of. So we have Daredevil, and he's put in a situation where he loses everything. And we have Spider-Man, where he's killed, essentially. He's buried for 2 weeks, and in those 2 weeks, Kraven rips his life apart. Albeit unintentionally. He doesn't seek to rip apart Spider-Man's life. He does that unintentionally. What he sees to do is to be the superior Spider-Man. He seeks to be a superior. I feel like this accomplishes more in 6 issues than Superior Spider-Man did in 35. I just feel like this is perfection in 6 issues. It just is. Some can say some things about the art. I feel like it fits the tone perfectly well. I don't have a problem with it. It's not my cup of tea, but it works for the overall tone of everything. It feels dark and gritty, and it's a dark and gritty story. It works. Kraven is never a character that Kraven's always a character that I thought was a bit of a joke, he's a bit of a dorky character. I feel like this story takes him from dorky character to one of Spider-Man's best villains, in my opinion. This story on its own, if this could have been the only Kraven story ever written, this would cement Kraven as probably the best Spider-Man villain ever. Because before this, Kraven was never really taken seriously. He was a guy who he was a hunter that dressed up in a lion's vest and had a little loincloth. he wasn't really to be taken seriously. And I feel like this story made him be taken seriously. And it's mostly through the use of the inner monologue, because that is what you can take everything that the characters are feeling. I feel like this is where comic books succeed over films, and books as a whole succeed over film, is because you can't fit that monologue. You can't portray that, what the character is thinking. It takes a lot more effort to portray what a character is thinking in television, in film, over in a comic book. And here it's done exceedingly well, because there is so little actually spoken. A lot more is monologue, in a monologue. So yeah, Amazing Spider-Man, Kravens Last Hunt, I give it a definite 10 out of 10. I'd give it an 11 out of 10 if I could. But yeah, I'd definitely give it a 10 out of 10. I'll see you guys in the next video. Till then, I will see you guys soon. I just realised I said the same thing twice. Yeah, I have social medias. Check them out. Links are in the description below. I have a Patreon, that link's in the description below. You can get the link to where you can buy these in the description below. And hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. See you guys in the next video. Peace.